The cantina on Kepler 7 station was the kind of place where broken dreams went to die. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting sickly purple shadows across tables stained with a dozen different alien bodily fluids. The air was thick with smoke from illegal Centauri cigars and the bitter smell of synthetic alcohol that could dissolve hull plating if you weren't careful. Commander? Dexville sat alone in the darkest corner, his massive frame hunched over a bottle of Romulan fire whiskey. The veteran Valdoran warrior was a sight to behold, even in his broken state. His natural armor plating, once a brilliant emerald green, was now a dull grayed brown, scarred by plasma burns and shrapnel wounds. Where his left eye should have been, a crude cybernetic implant whirred and clicked as it struggled to focus through the alcoholic haze. His forearms moved independently as he drank, one holding the bottle, another steadying himself against the table, a third, absently tracing the deep scar that ran from his neck down to his chest plate. The fourth arm hung useless at his side. The neural connection severed during what the official reports called a minor skirmish with human forces. There were no minor skirmishes with humans. Dexville had learned that lesson the hard way. The cantina's other patrons gave him a wide berth. Even the Klingon mercenaries and the notorious Orion pirates found excuses to sit elsewhere. Something about the old Valdoran radiated a kind of traumatic energy that made even hardened criminals uncomfortable. They could smell the nightmares. On him, that's when she walked in. Reporter Zara Velnine was young, maybe 30 standard years, with a kind of eager determination that only came from never having seen real war. Her Batazoid heritage showed in her large, expressive eyes and the way she seemed to sense emotions from across the room. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed that the right story could change the galaxy. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Zara had been hunting this story for months. The human war had ended 15 years ago, but finding veterans willing to talk was nearly impossible. Most had either died in the conflict, disappeared into the Outer Rim territories, or simply refused to speak about what they'd experienced. The few who did talk only offered sanitized versions of events, the kind of heroic nonsense that made good propaganda but revealed nothing about the truth. But Dexville was different. Sources had told her he was one of the few survivors of the Proxima Station siege, one of the bloodiest battles of the entire war. More importantly, he was drunk enough that he might actually talk. She approached his table slowly, like someone approaching a wounded predator. Commander Thesville? The cybernetic eye swiveled toward her with a mechanical whine that made her skin crawl. Up close, she could see that it wasn't just a replacement eye, but an entire neural interface, with fiber optic cables disappearing into his skull. The device had been installed hastily, probably in a battlefield medical unit, and the scarring around it suggested multiple surgeries to keep it functional. "I'm Zara Velnine from Galactic News Network," she continued, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was hoping to ask you about your service during the human war, about the battles that the official histories don't mention." Dexville's mandibles clicked together in what she hoped was amusement rather than aggression. The sound was like someone cracking bones. Humans. His voice was a gravelly whisper, damaged by years of breathing, recycled ship air, and screaming orders over the sound of weapons fire. "Little scribe, you don't want those stories. They'll poison your dreams and make you afraid of the dark." "What?" Zara had come too far to back down now. She activated her recording device and set it on the table between them. The galaxy has a right to know what really happened out there. The official reports say the war was won through superior strategy, an overwhelming force, but the casualty numbers don't match. Something else happened, didn't it? Dexville stared at the recording device for a long moment, his cybernetic eye analyzing it with mechanical precision. Then he laughed, a sound like grinding metal that made every other conversation in the cantina pause for a moment. "Superior strategy," he repeated, taking another long drink. "Is that what they're calling it now?" He leaned forward, and Zara caught a whiff of his breath. Alcohol, medicine, and something else. Something that smelled like fear. "Girl, do you know what a human looks like when they're about to die?" Zara shook her head, suddenly unsure if she really wanted to hear this story. "They smile," Dexville whispered, his voice dropping so low that her recording device could barely pick it up. When every other species in the galaxy faces death, they scream, they beg, they try to bargain. But humans, they smile. And then they take as many of you with them as they possibly can. The alcohol was finally winning against whatever internal barriers had kept him silent for 15 years. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time since she'd approached, he looked truly broken. "Fine," he said, raising the bottle in a mock toast. "You want to know about the human war? About what really happened to the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled? About why half the Valdoran fleet simply disappeared?" He drained the bottle in one long gulp and stared directly into her eyes. "But remember this, little scribe. When you can't sleep at night, when you check the shadows twice before entering a room, when you find yourself looking up at the stars and wondering what's coming back to find us, remember that you asked for this nightmare. It was supposed to be easy." Vexville began, his claws scraping against the metal table like nails on a chalkboard. The sound made other patrons wince, but he didn't seem to notice. Proxima Station was just a mining outpost floating in the middle of nowhere. Our intelligence said maybe 200 humans working the asteroid fields. Miners, engineers, maybe a handful of security guards with outdated pulse rifles. He paused to signal the bartender for another bottle. Cybernetic eye word is. It focused on memories 15 years old but still crystal clear. We brought 3,000 soldiers, the entire 7th Valdoran battle group, 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and enough dropships to land an army. High Command called it overkill training for the junior officers. Zara's recording device captured every word, but she found herself leaning forward despite herself. There was something in his voice, a tremor that spoke of horrors yet to come. Like that approach was textbook perfect, Dexville continued. We dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, expecting immediate surrender. Standard protocol was to give them 10 minutes to evacuate non-combatants, then move in for occupation. Simple, clean, efficient. His mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter laughter. The humans responded to our surrender demand with a single transmission. Just 2 words. He looked directly at Zara. "Come on," the way he said it made her shiver. Not come on like an invitation, but come on like a challenge. Like someone daring you to step into a trap they'd spent weeks preparing. Admiral Crickstal thought it was a translation error. How could 200 miners be challenging the most advanced military force in 3 sectors? He ordered the first wave to deploy immediately. 500 dropships carrying our best assault troops, all equipped with the latest combat armor and plasma weapons. Dixville's good eye went distant, staring at something only he could see. I was in the lead ship, Captain Vexnari of the 3rd Assault Division. We'd conquered 17 worlds together. This was supposed to be a promotion ceremony disguised as a military operation. The bottle arrived, and he took a long drink before. Continuing, the station looked dead from the outside. No defensive turrets, no shield generators, just a collection of industrial modules connected by transit tubes. Our scanners showed life signs scattered throughout, but no organized defensive positions. It looked like the humans were just hiding and hoping we'd go away. We should have known better. Zara found herself holding her breath. "What happened when you landed?" The docking bays were wide open, like they were welcoming us aboard.
Aberd.
Resistance, no defensive fire. Our first wave landed without losing a single soldier. That should have been our first warning. His claws scraped the table again, leaving deep grooves in the metal. Humans don't make things easy. Ever. The station's interior was a maze of mining tunnels, processing centers, and storage areas. Perfect for guerrilla warfare, but our thermal scanners showed most of the humans clustered in the central habitat modules. We figured they were making their last stand in the most defensible position. Dexville laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "We were so wrong it almost makes me laugh." Almost. Da. The first trap was elegant in its simplicity. 20 of our soldiers entered what looked like an empty cargo bay the humans had rigged. The entire room with mining charges. Not the sophisticated explosives we were used to dealing with. Just crude industrial demolition equipment that our sensors couldn't properly identify. His voice dropped to a whisper. When those charges went off, they didn't just kill our soldiers. They turned them into pieces. The explosion was so violent it registered on our ship's sensors from 3 kilometers away. But that wasn't the worst part, he continued, his cybernetic eye flickering as it processed the memory. The worst part was what came next. As soon as the explosion faded, music started playing over the station's communication system. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. Music? Old human songs. Something called rock and roll mixed with what they call country music. Songs about standing your ground, about fighting against impossible odds, about never giving up, no matter what. Dexville shuddered. The humans weren't just playing. It overed the speakers. They were singing along. Even as they died, even as our plasma fire burned through their makeshift barricades, they kept singing. I remember one song in particular. Something about won't back down. The melody was ... infectious. After 3 days on that station, caught myself humming it. That's when I knew we were in trouble. The reporter leaned forward. How long did the siege last? 3 months, Dexville said, and his voice carried the weight of every day. 3 months to take a station we should have captured in 3 hours. Every room cost us 20 soldiers. The humans turned their mining equipment into weapons we'd never seen before. Plasma cutters became sniper rifles. Industrial robots became suicide bombers. Even their food dispensers were booby-trapped. He took another drink, his hands shaking slightly. But the worst part wasn't the traps or the improvised weapons. It was the humans themselves. They never retreated. They never surrendered. When we cornered them in a room with no way out, they didn't beg for mercy or try to negotiate. They just smiled at us and activated whatever explosive device they'd rigged to the walls. By the end, we weren't fighting soldiers anymore. We were fighting ghosts who sang while they died and took pieces of our souls with them into whatever hell awaits. Warriors who die for a cause they believe in. His cybernetic eye focused on her with mechanical precision. That's when I learned the most important lesson of my military career. Humans aren't just another species you can conquer with superior firepower, or something else entirely. Something that turns every battle into their personal apocalypse, and they fight like it. Dexville's voice grew even quieter, forcing Zara to lean closer to catch his words. The cantina around them seemed to fade away as he spoke, his cybernetic eye dimming as if the memories were too painful even for artificial sight to process. But Proxima Station was nothing compared to Wolf 359. That's where we learned what humans really were. His claws stopped their nervous scratching against the table. For a moment, complete silence settled between them. That's where the war changed from conquest to something else entirely. He reached for his drink with a hand that trembled slightly. The bottle, clinking against his armored fingers, intelligence reports, made it sound like a turkey shoot. Wolf 359 was a civilian system, mostly cargo haulers, passenger liners, and a few mining vessels. No military installations, no defense platforms, just regular people trying to make a living in the outer colonies. Our fleet numbered 600 ships, he continued, his voice taking on the mechanical tone of someone reciting a nightmare. The pride of the Valderon Armada. Battle cruisers that could crack moons. Destroyers armed with plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid fields. Now fighter squadrons trained since childhood to dominate space combat. Dexville paused, staring into his drink as if searching for answers in the amber liquid. The humans had maybe 70 ships. Cargo haulers with outdated engines. Passenger transports built for comfort, not combat. Medical ships marked with their Red Cross symbols. Even school vessels carrying their young 2 colonies on the rim worlds. We thought it would be a massacre, he whispered, and the weight of those words seemed to press down on the entire cantina. It was, but not the way we expected. Zara found herself holding her breath, her recording device forgotten as she became lost in the veteran's tale. Admiral Crixtal opened communications first. Standard surrender demand. Power down your engines. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance is futile. The kind of thing we'd done 100 times before, on 100 different worlds. Dexville's mandibles clicked softly. The human response came from a cargo hauler called the Prairie Wind. Just an old man's voice, calm as deep space. He said, "Admiral, we're simple folks out here. We got families aboard these ships. children, but we also got something you need. To understand, the Admiral asked what that was, thinking maybe they wanted to negotiate safe passage for their civilians. That's when the old man said the words that still wake me up screaming some nights. Dexville's cybernetic eye flickered with what might have been tears if machines could cry. He said we got nowhere else to run. The silence stretched between them like a void in space. Finally, Dexville continued, his voice barely above a whisper. That's when we realized we weren't fighting soldiers or even desperate colonists. We were fighting cornered animals who would rather die than watch their families become slaves. And cornered animals, especially human ones, are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The battle started normal enough. Our forward destroyers moved into attack formation, targeting their largest ships first. Standard procedure: eliminate their ability to coordinate, then mop up the smaller vessels. He took another drink, longer this time. The humans didn't even return fire at first. They just accelerated. Zara's eyes widened. Accelerated. Straight at us. It's not to some tactical position or trying to escape to hyperspace. Straight at our battle line at maximum burn. Dexville's voice carried a mix of horror and something that might have been respect. When our sensors confirmed what they were doing, Admiral Crixtal started laughing. He thought it was some kind of desperate bluff that they'd break off at. The last second, they didn't break off. The first ship to hit us was a medical transport called Mercy's Hand. Big white ship with healing symbols painted all over the hull. Our point defense systems turned it into scrap metal 3 seconds before impact. But the debris cloud still took out 2 of our escort fighters. That's when we realized this wasn't a desperate charge. It was a calculated sacrifice. Dexville S. Cybernetic I-word, as it focused on something beyond the cantina walls. Every human ship accelerated to ramming speed. Cargo haulers full of families, passenger liners carrying thousands, even their school vessels with children aboard. Our weapons cut them apart, but momentum doesn't care about hull integrity. 70 ships became 70 kinetic missiles aimed straight at the heart of our fleet. The reporter's recording device captured the long silence that followed, but it couldn't capture the weight of trauma that seemed to press down on the old warrior like gravity from a dead star. I was on the bridge of the dreadnought Kethmorin when it happened. He continued finally. A human transport, call sign Sweet Home, broke through our defensive fire somehow. Old cargo hauler, probably older than some of our officers. It was burning, leaking atmosphere, half its hull blown away by our plasma cannons. But it kept coming. The cum channels were open. Could hear everything. Dexville's voice cracked. There were families on that ship. Mothers, fathers, children. And as their ship died around them, as they flew straight into our guns knowing they had seconds to live, they weren't screaming or crying. They were singing lullabies. The words hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Zara realized she was crying, tears streaming down her face as she imagined the scene. I can still hear them, Dexville whispered. Soft voices singing gentle. Songs about stars and dreams and how love never dies. Mother's voice promising her daughter that they'd see Daddy again soon. A father humming a melody about brave little ships sailing through the night sky. Sweet Home hit our flagship dead center. Explosion lit up half the system. Admiral Crixtal and 3,000 crew members died instantly. But in those final seconds before impact, I swear I could hear one last voice over the cum. Little girl, maybe 6 years old, asking her mama if the pretty lights outside meant they were going to see the angels now. Dexville finished his drink and set the empty bottle down with shaking hands. What kind of species sings to their young while flying into certain death? What kind of people turn their children's bedtime songs into war cries? That's when I understood what we were really fighting. Not just another alien species, but something that loved so fiercely, they'd turn that love into a weapon that could crack the soul of anyone who witnessed it. We won that battle, technically. 57 human ships destroyed, only 43 of ours lost, but victory? He laughed bitterly. Nobody wins when children sing lullabies on their way to die for a cause they're too young to understand but old enough to believe in. You want to know what really broke us? Dexville's cybernetic eye flickered like a dying star, its mechanical iris struggling to focus. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It wasn't even watching them die singing to their children. Was there mercy? He touched the deep scars along his neck, purple lines that ran like twisted rivers across his armored skin. The marks were old but still tender, and Zara could see him wince as his claws traced their path. After Wolf 359, the war changed. High Command realized we weren't fighting a conventional enemy, so they changed tactics. Instead of massive fleet engagements, they ordered surgical strikes against human colonies. Hit their supply lines, destroy their manufacturing, break their will to fight. His voice carried the weight of someone who had followed orders he wished he could forget. I was reassigned to the 9th Bomber Wing. Elite pilots flying the newest Phantom class, assault fighters. Our job was simple: drop plasma charges on human industrial centers and get out before their defenses could respond. Clean, efficient, minimal casualties. Dexville paused to signal for another drink, but his hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold the bottle when it arrived. New Sol was supposed to be a routine mission. Small colony world, maybe 50,000 humans, mostly farmers and light industry. One bombing run, destroy their power grid, move on to the next target. The humans had other ideas. Their defense grid was more sophisticated than our intelligence indicated. They'd hidden surface-to-air missile batteries in their grain silos, turned their farming equipment into mobile weapons platforms. When we came in for our attack run, the sky lit up with defensive fire. His cybernetic eye dimmed as he accessed the painful memory. My wingman, Texavel, took a direct hit from what looked like a modified harvester. His ship exploded so close to mine that the shockwave sent me spinning into the atmosphere. My fighter's engine caught fire, control systems failed, and I was falling toward the surface like a meteorite. I managed to engage the emergency systems just before impact. But my ship still hit the ground doing about 300 kilometers per hour. The crash threw me clear of the wreckage, but my left leg was crushed, 3 ribs were broken, and I had internal bleeding that was slowly killing me. Zara found herself leaning forward, caught up in the veteran's tale despite its darkness.
Ow.
Long were you trapped? 2 days, Dexville replied, his voice barely above a whisper. 2 days lying in a field of some crop the humans call corn, watching my blood pool in the alien soil. I could hear search parties in the distance, humans calling to each other, coordinating their efforts to find survivors from the crash. Expected torture when they found me? Every military briefing had told us that humans were savage, that they treated prisoners with cruelty beyond imagination. When I heard footsteps approaching my position, I tried to activate my suit's self-destruct mechanism rather than be taken alive. The explosive didn't work. Damaged in the crash, probably. So I lay there, bleeding and broken, waiting for the nightmare to begin. Instead, I heard a voice, soft, concerned, speaking in accented standard Galactic. Oh my God, he's hurt badly. Jin, bring the medical kit. Quickly. Dexville's mandibles clicked softly, a sound Zara was beginning to recognize as his way of processing difficult emotions. A human woman knelt beside me. She was young, maybe 30 standard years, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore simple clothes, a farmer's overalls covered by a white coat with medical symbols. She should have been afraid. I'm a Valdoran warrior, trained to kill from the moment I could walk. Even wounded, I was still dangerous. But she looked at me with these eyes full of— He paused, searching for the right word. Compassion. She was seeing a person instead of an enemy. My name is Dr. Kong Minjin, she said in perfect standard Galactic. I'm a doctor. We're going to help you. Just like that. No questions about military secrets. No demands for information about our fleet positions. Just a promise to help. They carried me to their hospital on a stretcher made from farming equipment. The building was small, obviously designed for a rural community, but it was clean and well-equipped. Dr. Kang worked on me for 18 hours straight, repairing internal damage, setting broken bones, replacing the blood I'd lost. Dexville's voice cracked with emotion. When they ran out of synthetic plasma, compatible with Valdoran physiology, she gave me her own blood. Literally opened a vein and let her life flow into mine. Her hands were so gentle, so careful. Every touch was meant to heal, not hurt. kept waiting for the catch. The moment when the kindness would end and the interrogation would begin. But it never came. Dr. King treated me like any other patient, with the same professional care she'd give to her own people. On the second day, she sat beside my bed during a quiet moment. I asked her why she was helping me, why she would save the life of someone who had come to destroy her world. You know what she said? Zara shook her head, transfixed by the story. Said, "Because you're hurt, and I'm a doctor. That's enough." Dexville's cybernetic eye flickered with something that might have been tears. No politics, no grand speeches about the nature of war, just simple human compassion. 3 days later, the prisoner exchange happened. Standard military protocol, they traded me for 5 human civilians we'd captured in a raid on their shipping lanes. As they loaded me onto the transport ship, Dr. Kong came to see me off. She knew what would happen next. She knew I'd be debriefed, re-equipped, and sent back into combat. She knew I would return to bombing human cities, maybe even New Seoul itself. She knew I might kill her people, her friends, maybe even her family. But she saved me anyway. She handed me a small package as I was leaving. Inside was a photograph of her family, including 2 young children. On the back, she'd written a message in standard Galactic. "Remember that your enemies have families too. Remember that we all bleed the same color." Dexville finished his drink and stared at the empty bottle. I carried that photograph through the rest of the war. Every time I dropped bombs on human settlements, I thought about Dr. Kong's gentle hands healing my wounds. Every time I saw human casualties, I remembered her children's faces smiling at me from that picture. "That's not warfare," he whispered, his voice breaking completely. "That's something else entirely. Something that gets into your soul and changes you forever. The humans didn't just fight us with weapons and tactics. They fought us with kindness, with mercy, with love. And somehow, that was the most terrifying weapon of all. How do you fight an enemy who heals your wounds? How do you destroy people who would give their own blood to save your life? How do you hate beings who show you more compassion than your own commanders ever did? You can't. That's the answer. You can't fight that kind of war and remain the same person you were when it started. The humans didn't just defeat our armies. They defeated our certainty that we were the good. Guys in this story, and that little scribe is a wound that never heals." The cantina had grown eerily quiet around them. What started as background chatter and the usual sounds of a busy spaceport watering hole had gradually faded to whispers, then to nothing. Other patrons had unconsciously moved away from their table, sensing something in Dexville's words that made even hardened spacers uncomfortable. The Klingon mercenaries had left entirely. Even the notorious Orion pirates had found urgent business elsewhere. Zara realized that everyone in the cantina was listening, drawn by the magnetic horror of a story that explained so much about the galaxy's current state of nervous peace. "We won the war," Dexville said finally, his voice carrying the weight of someone confessing a terrible sin. "Superior numbers, better technology, more resources. The mathematics were simple. We had everything. They had nothing. Humans were pushed back to their core worlds, their fleets destroyed, their colonies occupied. Earth itself was blockaded for 3 years before they finally signed the surrender treaty." He pushed himself up from the table, his scarred frame casting long shadows across the cantina floor and the flickering neon light. The victory parades lasted for months. Every world in the Empire celebrated. Children wore miniature military uniforms and played games about conquering the savage humans. The history books were already being written, the glorious triumph of civilization over barbarism. "But I've been watching the signals from human space," he continued, his cybernetic eye flickering with data streams that only he could see. "Monitoring their communications, tracking their ship movements, analyzing their industrial output. They've been quiet for 15 years. Too quiet." Zara looked up from her notes, sensing that this was the most important part of the story. "What do you mean by too quiet? You're not rebuilding their old civilization," Dexville explained, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the now silent cantina. "They're building something new, something harder, something that learned from every mistake they made in the last war." He began pacing, his movements mechanical precision betraying the military training that even 15 years of alcohol couldn't completely erase. You have to understand, humans don't fight wars like we do. We fight for territory, for resources, for political advantage, for glory, strategic objectives that can be negotiated, compromised on, traded away when the cost becomes too high. Humans don't fight for any of those things, he said, his cybernetic eye focusing on each patron in turn like a targeting system. They fight like every battle is the last battle their species will ever face. They fight like extinction is the only alternative to victory. There's no middle ground with them, no acceptable loss, no strategic withdrawal. That's what made them so dangerous the first time, and it's what makes them terrifying now. Dexville stopped pacing and turned to face Zara directly. 15 years ago, we taught them that we were stronger. Our technology was superior, our tactics more sophisticated, our resources more abundant. We demonstrated every weapon in our arsenal, revealed every strategic doctrine, showed them exactly how we fight and how we think. The younglings in the Empire think we conquered humanity, he continued, his mandibles clicking with bitter amusement. They believe the war is over, that the humans have been pacified, reduced to a minor irritant, confined to their own solar system. They see the peace treaty as proof of their father's military genius. But I know better. We didn't defeat them. We educated them, gave them a 15-year masterclass in how to destroy us. He moved toward the cantina's exit, but his words continued to carry clearly through the artificial atmosphere. Think about it, scribe. What do you do when you're outgunned, outnumbered, and facing an enemy with superior technology? You adapt, you evolve, you become something new. The signals I've been monitoring aren't coming from shipyards building cargo haulers and passenger liners. They're coming from construction facilities that dwarf anything we built during the war. Massive industrial complexes that work around the clock, producing ships and weapons unlike anything in our tactical databases. Zara stood up, following him across the cantina floor. What kind of ships? Unknown configurations, Dexville replied, his cybernetic eye worry as it accessed classified intelligence files. Hull designs that don't match any known human engineering principles. Power signatures that suggest weapon systems beyond our current understanding. Ships that appear to be built not just for war, but for a very specific kind of war. A war against us? He paused at the cantina's entrance, his silhouette framed against the corridor's harsh lighting. But it's not just the technology. It's the humans themselves. The peace treaty allowed for limited cultural exchange, diplomats, traders, a few scientists. Every human I've met in the last 15 years has been different. Different how? Harder, colder. They smile when they need to, say the right words at the right moments, follow all the proper protocols. But there's something in their eyes that wasn't there before, something that looks at every alien they meet and calculates exactly how long it would take to kill them. They're not the same species we fought 15 years ago. We forged them. In the fire of defeat, and what emerged is something that makes their ancestors look like peaceful farmers. Dexville's voice carried a note of genuine fear now, something that chilled every being in the cantina. Mark my words, scribe. The humans are coming back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when they do, they won't be flying cargo haulers, jury-rigged with mining equipment. They'll be coming in ships designed by people who learned from every battle we fought, who studied every tactic we used, who memorized every weakness we revealed. Ships crewed by humans who grew up hearing stories about Wolf 359, about Proxima Station, about Dr. Kong and all the others who died so that their children could live to fight another day. And this time, they won't be fighting for survival. They'll be fighting for revenge. He stepped into the corridor, then paused one final time. The Empire calls it the Great Peace. 15 years of unprecedented prosperity and expansion. But peace is just the time between wars, and the humans have been using that time very, very well. When they come, and they will come, they won't be the desperate underdogs we remember. They'll be the galaxy's worst nightmare made manifest. Something far worse than anything the universe has ever seen. It's because we taught them how to be. The cantina fell completely silent as Dexville disappeared into the station's maze of corridors, leaving only the soft hum of Zara's recording device and the terrible weight of his prophetic words hanging in the recycled air. Far across the galaxy, in the depths of space surrounding a small blue world called Earth, massive construction yards worked around the clock. The ships taking shape in those yards bore no resemblance to the desperate civilian vessels that had thrown themselves against the Valderon fleet at Wolf 359. These were purpose-built instruments of war, designed by minds that had spent 15 years studying their enemies' weaknesses. And in the command centers of those yards, human officers with names like Captain Kim and Admiral Park studied tactical reports with cold, patient smiles. They had learned much from their defeat, and they were eager to demonstrate their education. The war was over. The reckoning was just beginning, somewhere in the darkness between stars. Humanity was preparing to remind the galaxy why they had fought so desperately the first time. This time, they wouldn't be fighting for survival. This time, they would be fighting to win. The end.